All right, better late than ever, right? I probably completely screwed the viewership for this, but hey. Um, well, we've got 4 people here. Probably not all the ones that were here earlier, but Grish was here. uh, David was here. Jay was here. Maybe we'll recover a little bit. I don't know. I did get a line of storms. I think the power blipped for a minute, but yeah. Terrell is here. Might still be here. Don't know. um, you know, and it's funny. I thought about right at the beginning of the hard storm going through. I thought about canceling this. I probably should have. Let's see. Yeah, the problem is I left my ringer turned off from work again. And my phone was almost dead, but not completely. Turn off the do not disturb. I do have a few notes we can go through tonight. I'll probably speed this up and push through them a bit because I did actually spend some time preparing for this one. Go figure. So we'll go until I finish the beer or when I get through the notes, whichever comes first, right? Yeah. Well, the air conditioner went off, and then I did pass out after the air conditioner went off because of the heat. So, oh, this time works better for you. Okay. Well, I guess that's something. Um, well, it was a storm and the heat from the air conditioner being off in that room. So that is not a Guinness. This is the same thing I was drinking the other night. This is the Edmund Fitzgerald Porter from Great Lakes Brewing Company. So the local Michigan brewing company. Uh, but hey, look at it this way. Jeff from Craft Technologies, Craft whatever, was doing a 9 o'clock stream. So y'all had an opportunity to see his. And I think it was practically on the same subject. So, all right, enough of me rambling. Let me bring up my notes and we'll run through this and see where we end up. Because I did do an outline today, which makes me more mad that I messed up the time. Let's see, YouTube. video, live stream outlines. Okay, so let's see. It'll let me copy the damn link. There we go. Okay, so in the little teaser short that I did today, I made mention about how this time Windows ending feels different, right? And you know, Denmark is dumping Office and Windows for LibreOffice and Linux. Previously, we had seen one of the German states, and I will probably butcher the pronunciation on this. Can't even visit a website anymore without 3 pop-ups on your screen before you can even do anything. Okay, so how one German state is rewriting the rules of public sector IT. This is from April of this year. And this is talking about Schleswig-Holstein. And again, it's not alone. France, Gendarmerie began its move to open source 21 years ago. Italy. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. China. North Korea has its own Linux-based OS. You know, you've got nice little charts that people are putting out like this one. And one of the big things, and I'll come back to this in a few minutes, is control and sovereignty. And it basically boils down to other governments, other governmental entities don't want to be dependent on a foreign technology or set of technologies to run their government. And I've been talking about this for years. So, you know, there are plenty of examples, and I'm not going to go as deep into this as I might have done if we had started 2 hours ago, but oh, crap. I never. Okay, well, let me recap that. So Denmark is moving to Linux, and what I'd been talking about here. This is talking about Schleswig-Holstein or Holstein, whatever it is. France, Italy, whatever that is, and China. We all know North Korea has their own Linux-based OS. You know, and like I've been saying, you know, if countries are going to do this, if governments are going to do this, there's no better time than now, right? So the other thing that is happening these days that didn't happen before You know, when we saw the end of XP, the end of the abomination that came after XP, the end of 7, 2 back-to-back abominations between 7 and 10. The thing that's different, the thing that's really different is how our current government is making things a little more difficult for other governments to feel comfortable doing business with U.S. companies. I mean, I'll just say it. I don't want to get political, but when you've got government switching, this is a political issue. And tariffs aren't going to help the cause on this. And it was bound to happen sooner or later that it was going to come to the software side of things as well. But, you know, the writing's been on the wall for a while. And, you know, ultimately, this could end up having an impact on Microsoft, Apple, Adobe, and others. You know, and in contrast to 2015, when Windows 10 came out, which is 10 years ago, mind you. And I know this because I beta tested it. It was buggy as hell then. The difference is, you know, another difference is, well, let's bring up this article. Microsoft pushes full screen ads for Copilot Plus PCs on Windows 10 users. Windows is an advertising platform, or Windows as an advertising platform. You know, it was one thing to see the occasional ad, but full screen ads is pushing it a little too far. You know, so couple this with all the governmental units that are switching. And sure, you know, I hear the argument, oh, well, Active Directory, Active Directory, Active Directory. The world is not the same as it was in 1995 or whenever it was that Active Directory was introduced. The world got along fine with some challenges, but they got along fine with a domain system without Active Directory. Active Directory, in large part, was envisioned, at least in the traditional sense, was envisioned when work at home was not viable. When bring your own device was not a thing. When, you know, a lot of things were different in the 1990s when Active Directory came about. And just because I don't want to get my dates wrong, okay, February 17th, 2000. It was introduced in Windows 2000. So they've had a 25-year run. There are other ways of doing things now that would likely work better for our current situation. It's just that nobody wants to leave their precious Active Directory. I made it back to see the start. Yeah, well, that's my fault. Let's keep in mind the writing has been on the wall for a while. Not just the last 5.55 months. Yes, exactly. But like many things in life, people wait until the last minute and then they panic. Which you know, I can see organizations panicking a little bit, especially those that don't have full-time IT. You know, but what else is stacking this time to make a difference in my eyes? Well, you've got the Document Foundation, famous for their support of LibreOffice, putting up this beautiful website, kind of simple but effective, and just get straight to the point. Support for Windows 10 ends on October 14th. Microsoft wants you to buy a new computer. And as I've made the point in previous videos, what if you can make your current one fast and secure again? Well, you can using Linux. You don't have to have a Microsoft account. You don't have to have a TPM 2.0 chip or have Secure Boot turned on. You can, in fact, make that older computer viable again. I've done it. I thought I had one of my laptops in here. I guess I don't have right at the tip of my fingers. But the fact is, you can do it. The two laptops I've got currently, and I've got two because they're fast enough for me when I'm on the road, and I bought one as a backup because they are older laptops. And even though I've gone through and I've cleaned them up on the inside, you know, old technology can fail. It does fail from time to time. But I take measures to keep things backed up. And usually what I'm using on the laptops is NoteSnook, which is it syncs to their server. So we've got government switching. We've got a push from within the Linux community to you know, extend an olive branch to the people that have been using Windows 10, right? This effort is more extensive in Europe. I'll be the first to say it. But given the happenings at G7 recently, I'm not sure that you know, that those events help the cause any. Let's just put it that way. I don't feel like going on a political rant tonight, and I'm sure you don't want to hear it. But you know, this has a good number of organizations here that have joined the campaign, and a lot of them are Linux supporting organizations. You've got the Document Foundation, Zorin OS, KDE, some of these other ones I don't know right off the top of my head at this time of night, Debian, and whatnot. So you know, they even talk you through, you know, finding Linux support. Now, granted, there are a few places in the US, let's say Load Map. There are a few places in the US that are participating in this. I've thought about adding the library to this, but I'm being cautious right now if I want to do that. But yeah, Colorado, California, Idaho, Minnesota, one in Michigan, Nebraska, Arkansas, Virginia, and whatnot. Oh, there's even one in Canada. One, Montreal. And it looks like there's even one going on in Alaska. So, all right, we've got we've established a little bit of a pattern here happening. But what else has changed? What in the past few years has changed? Not Stream Deck. Steam Deck. So gaming has changed. Valve has done a phenomenal job on bringing gaming to Linux via Steam, via Steam Deck, and now the Legion Go S. Ironically, not the Legion Go's that are listed here, but the Legion Go S model, which is for Steam. And ironically, Best Buy has it for the same price as the Windows version. Oh, here we go. The entry level one is $599, which is a $200 difference, or $130 difference from the Windows version, right? Or $100 for the same entry level model, it looks like. So there are options. Ready to go. You don't have to install anything. If you are more concerned with gaming than with productivity software on your Windows 10 machine, and you mainly use it for gaming, there's Bazite. Bazite is like a more open version of SteamOS. And you can install it on a desktop or a laptop, not just handheld devices. This was not where it is now when the transition between Windows 7 the abomination that came before Windows 10 and Windows 10 came out, right? So my final real point on this is, you know, remember that full page ad article that I had up a few minutes ago? The one that says Microsoft wants you to buy a Copilot Plus PC. Well, to that, I summon Rage Against the Machine and say, F you, I won't do what you tell me. I will rage against the machine that is Microsoft. I don't have any Windows 10 machines running on my network right now as it is. So, they can pound dirt as far as I'm concerned. And the Windows 11 machine that I've got is on thin ice. I'm about to the point where I just want to wipe it and use it for something else, and just run Windows in a virtual machine if I need to run Windows for a demo of any sort. So, my underlying point being that things are different now. There are many events happening, many technologies that are in place that were not as mature 10 years ago, that for offices, you can switch over if you're willing to make some changes to the way you operate. For gamers, you can drop Windows 10, and with the exception of maybe some of the top AAA games, you can run Steam on Linux. Now, the caveat there being, of course, the game developers and their anti-cheat technology still flags Linux. I foresee that changing in the next couple of years, as Steam OS rolls out to more third-party devices. So there are fundamental differences between now and when Windows 10 was originally introduced. But hey, it's been 10 years, so the one thing I can say about the Linux space is that time does not stand still. It keeps moving, and the changes are sometimes small and incremental, but over the course of a decade, those add up. So, you had to know with a topic like this that it was going to be a little ranty, that it was there's no getting around touching on the political aspect of this. I'm not picking sides. I'm just stating what is. And things are different. Other governments are nervous about the things that are going on right now, and rightfully so. If I were a foreign government, I would want to, for any, private companies could do whatever the hell they want, right? But it is better use of the tax dollars for my constituents if, as much as possible, things can be open source to the degree that some governments are even developing their own internal applications, and they are open sourcing them so other governments can use them, right? And yes, there are other larger ticket line items on a government's list of expenditures, shall we say, that would add up to a whole lot more than all the software for a given country in the government sector. But if you got rid of, or at least lessened, the amount of licensing, you are saving some money, and not insignificant money. So anyway, let me get off my soapbox for a minute and see what is going on in here in the chat. We are up to 6 people. I probably haven't earned it tonight, but I'm going to throw this up anyways. Again, my apologies for being late. Maybe I should be scheduling these for 11 o'clock at night. Maybe the trick is to get a second wind and then, start at 10:30 or 11 and run them for 2 hours. But Alonzo is back. Welcome. Can you summarize the government thing with Linux? So basically, it boils down to other governments wanting more control over the software that their government uses. And with the many different Linux distributions, you've got choice. Now, sure, Red Hat is based here in the US. Ubuntu isn't. SUSE isn't. Rocky and Alma are not based here. There are options. And, with some retraining, with some, use of consultants to make it happen, you can implement, maybe not to the exact level as Microsoft's Active Directory, but you can have a directory service on a Linux server or multiple servers. Much of the technology that goes into Active Directory didn't originate at Microsoft. The big thing that Microsoft did was put a pretty graphical interface on it and a bunch of glue logic to tie all the pieces together. But many of those pieces do exist on other platforms. So Kerberos, among others, and I'm not going to be able to name them all off the top of my head tonight, but that stuff is available. There are also things like, let me jump back over here for a minute. I'm drawing a blank on the name. JumpCloud, which is sort of a web-based domain controller alternative cloud directory. Right in their description, right? And you've got other options besides JumpCloud available as well. I've worked with JumpCloud before. It's a nice system. They've added a whole bunch of stuff to it since I last worked with it. But there are options. Now, one thing this is touting, cross OS device management. Mac OS, Linux, iOS, iPad, Android. Yes, Windows too. But, much like many things on Linux, this is going to have a web-driven administration interface. And, it will integrate with SSO, single sign-on technologies. So there are some advantages. Now, somebody, of course, will point out Azure Active Directory. Well, that's an option if you're staying in the Windows ecosystem. You get beyond Windows and it kind of falls apart. Jump Cloud from the start has been friendly to non-Windows operating systems. It does have even supports Radius, so you can integrate it with your Wi-Fi for enterprise Wi-Fi. It does have policies that are similar, not exactly the same, but similar to group policy on Active Directory. But there are options. I've probably been dabbling with Jump Cloud for the last 10 years. I don't even know if my accounts are active at this point. Doesn't appear so. I know they've changed. They've changed in large part. Do admin log on. They've changed their underlying technologies since I started using this, and you know, since I didn't have a use for it the whole time, my accounts probably just went stale and were deleted, which is fine. It's not a big deal. The community center where I'd use Jump Cloud to control the PCs stopped using the PCs, and so Jump Cloud couldn't sync things to them. And you know, I wouldn't blame Jump Cloud for disabling my accounts. Personal reality check. Though I love Unix and have extremely warm feelings for Linux, I found it difficult to convince any other members of my family to make the switch away from Windows. That's fair. That's fair. And I have over the years, over 25 years, I think I have successfully switched over 5 people, which isn't a lot. But if you consider how polished it is now versus where it was in, say, 1999, you know, it's a whole different ball game. Most people that have heard of Linux tried it way too early, and they expected it to do everything that Windows did. And the fact of the matter is, there's not a collective mind behind all of Linux that can strategically push it forward the way there is with Windows or Mac OS. But you know, I've been really put off by all the telemetry, the advertising, and other things. And I have days at work where I'm very close to converting my desktop PC into a virtual machine and running Linux on my desktop because it annoys me that much. But you know, it is a your mileage may vary thing. If you know, for people who have the means, they're just going to get another newer Windows machine. Fine, you know, I get it. I get it. You know, people don't like change. People don't want to have to jump through the hoops that you sometimes have to jump through to get games to work on Linux. I get it. And I'm not saying that it's for everybody or ready for everybody. However, there's going to be a lot of quite usable, quote unquote, e waste that is going to be flooding the market in the fall. Especially as, businesses complete their migration to Windows 11. And that's a boon for everybody else, right? Because Optiplexes and Think Centers and HP Pro Desks, they are workhorse machines. And, you slap Linux on it and you can continue using those for years to come, whether for a desktop or for some sort of edge server role. So, I get it. The place that I am more interested in pushing Linux is the edges, right? Governments and low income folks. If you're in between those two and you have the means and you're not going to have to use credit to do it, go for it. Get another Windows box. So I get it. Yeah, well, I figured that one out. That's all right. I've been avoiding the news the last few days. I like Zorin Elementary and Mint Linux. Yep. I typically go with Debian and Ubuntu, and I'm not the biggest fan of Ubuntu, but what I have found, or Ubuntu-based systems, let's just put it that way. What I have found is that if you stick close to the Ubuntu and surrounding distributions. So Debian's in the center, then you've got Ubuntu, and then you've got all the ones that are based on Ubuntu. If you stick close to that, then you typically have a little more support if you're more of a home user, if you want to do gaming. Now, yes, there are going to be some Arch users out there that, by the way, they use Arch. Yes, I get it. I've heard it for the last however many years. Arch doesn't impress me that much. I've run Arch systems. I've broken Arch systems more than I want to admit. And I keep finding myself back into the Debian family, right? Which, I mean, all those that you listed, Alonzo, are Debian based by way of Ubuntu. And we've got a new Linux Mint coming out this summer sometime, probably between now and July, end of July. We've got a new version of Debian coming out, Debian 13, which will usher in, more distributions based on Debian. Linux Mint Debian Edition is the one I'm most looking forward to. And that is because they are bringing over the desktop and a lot of the utilities and glue logic that they've put into the mainstream Linux Mint. But the biggest addition that I'm excited for is the OEM capabilities. So similar to Windows. And if you've ever had to support Windows and build a quote unquote master image, there's a procedure you go through that they call sysprep, which basically makes things more generic so that it's prepared to deploy to multiple machines. They'll all get a common image, right? And honestly, this is what this is the drum I've been beating even for Windows admins for years now. And it's only in the last 2 or 3 years that people have started writing articles and talking about this idea on Windows. Use a generic image and then use a utility to push the software to that image. There are utilities out there that will let you auto join the Active Directory, auto install the software you need. Microsoft has added, well, this is after Windows 10. I'm not sure if Windows 11 was out already, but they may have introduced it with Windows 10. But you not only got the Windows terminal with PowerShell as the default, but you also got, finally, a package manager on Windows, which to me is something that they should have had 15 years ago. But, they were slow on the uptake. Let's see. I must be beyond ancient. I can never play a game on a phone. I still enjoy playing the original SimCity 3000 on my desktop with my granddaughter. Yeah, I mean, I will still occasionally fire up Dune 2000. That's DUNE, not DOOM. Because Dune 2000 is an updated version of Dune 2, which came out in 90s, early to mid 90s. Yes, that's one of the abominations that we shall not speak of. Not a gamer, but I need Windows OS for wife. Yep. I get it. You gotta hit the spousal approval factor. But there's also the idea of whether you're talking security or whether you're talking general computing, have layers of things. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. So if your wife needs a Windows machine, pick up something cheap on Facebook Marketplace, eBay, shopgoodwill.com, your local university surplus store. Throw a Linux on there. Have the ability to get online without Windows if that Windows machine should have issues. And the other issue, and I was going to make a video about this the other day, but when Microsoft's website was having some issues, if you were going to keep a Windows 10 machine around, say you're not even going to have it connected to the internet, download the ISO image for Windows 10 ASAP. Have that on a thumb drive. Have it on an external hard drive. Have it somewhere. Because once support for Windows 10 goes away, the ability to grab a new copy of that ISO image is going to go away as well. Now, some of us who are digital pack rats will probably have that available, but it's not legal to distribute that. So, you know, now could it end up on archive.org? Sure. But, you know, still keep a copy of the Windows 10 ISO around if you have a Windows 10 machine, just to save your bacon if something goes wrong. Hardware failures do still happen occasionally. I would switch to Mac, but I would have to teach my wife. Yeah. The one good quality I will say my ex-fiance had is that she was a Mac user. um, so let's see. Yeah, I probably should. Just because this has happened more than once. PC World was not helpful to Linux in a stream earlier today. I'm not at all surprised. Because for so many years PC has equaled Windows that yeah, they built their whole empire around that idea. I have too much invested in PCs, Microsoft Surface Studio. Microsoft stop support. I will purchase the HP all-in-one. That's fair. Funny enough, I have heard of people running Linux on Microsoft Surfaces. So, Jim, KJ3N. I'm guessing you're a ham. Welcome. Let's see. Do you think there will be a country-based distro, something like the Germany distro? In the U.S., I doubt it. I mean, here I don't think there's as much of a necessity to do it because I'm sure you want a longer answer. I don't think there's as much of a necessity to do it because we have Red Hat based here in the U.S. in large part, since they're a subsidiary of IBM or IBM's a subsidiary of Red Hat, depending on how you view the transaction that joined the companies. Microsoft announced Fedora Linux is an official distribution within their Windows subsystem for Linux. Yep. One of several. They, of course, started with Ubuntu because Ubuntu has the designation of being the single most popular Linux distribution, like it or hate it. Yeah, a Charlie Foxtrot. One snafu after another. And for anybody that needs a good laugh, look up Private Snafu. It was actually a cartoon character from World War II. Not very politically correct for the current atmosphere today, but funny nonetheless. And for those of us who had grandfathers that served in World War II, it's kind of funny to watch some of that stuff that your grandfather may have been exposed to, 80 years ago or a little more than 80 years ago. Um, USB install didn't work, kept freezing, and they never even tried another Linux distro. Quickly jumped to Windows 10. Okay, so didn't help my confidence by trying to install it the first time with 2 GPUs installed and using a motherboard. I would never buy. Well, yeah. I mean, you look at some of the epic fails that some high profile people have had when trying to switch to Linux, and you have to start asking questions at some point. I mean, what kind of exotic hardware are they throwing at it? Are they using the newest of the new and expecting there to be Linux support? The developers in and around the Linux ecosphere are wizards in their ability to keep adding support for new hardware that the developer of said hardware doesn't provide official support for. That being said, if I were recommending Linux to anybody, I don't necessarily recommend buying a brand new computer to do it or building a brand new computer to do it. I had a professor in college that told us that, and this wasn't directly in reference to Linux, even. This was just directed more towards cost, bang for the buck. And, he always told us in the 2 classes I had with him that the quote unquote sweet spot, price to performance, bang for the buck, whatever you want to call it, is, equipment that's 1 to 2 years old. And on a related note, AMD just dropped in the last week or so another AM4 processor with 3D V-Cache, continuing to extend support to and life for the AM4 platform. That's, I don't even know how old that is now, 6-ish years. Socket AM4. No, longer than that. Socket AM4. AM4 was launched in 2016. So we're talking almost 9 years now. And they're still releasing new processors for it. Talk about bang for the buck. As long as you stuck to a mainstream Asus, ASRock, Gigabyte, maybe a couple of others, motherboard, they're still releasing processors that will work on your computer and be more or less drop-in replacements. And AM5 has been around since late 2022. So, Intel, on the other hand, they have a habit of changing motherboard sockets the way some people change their underwear. I'm not talking about myself, thank you very much, but they do tend to iterate on their processor sockets more frequently than AMD does. And you know, it is what it is. All right, so we've actually made it to an hour and 3 minutes. So I guess I've covered all of the bullet points in my notes. But you know, I guess I'll just close the topic with this. You know, never has there been a time when Linux was more capable as a platform, when there was more capable hardware that Linux can run on that is or will be available at a low price. Factor in the tariff situation, and you know, using a used machine with Linux, you don't have to pay tariffs on it because it's already here. And you know, it is what it is. You have to make the right decision for you, and I'm not going to change your mind. But I wouldn't be true to myself and to what I envisioned this channel being if I didn't talk about the current state of affairs and the opportunity that does exist for using Linux. You know, I can see where, as more people are more comfortable with Linux, I'm talking on the IT side, not the end user side. As more people are more comfortable with Linux, and this may come as a byproduct of you know, people that have a little bit more money available to them opting for a Steam Deck rather than a Nintendo Switch. Because the Steam Deck also has a Linux desktop mode. You could use it as a single computer if you really wanted to go down that route. But, you know, the hardware available to run Linux has never been better. The speed at which features are being developed for the Linux family of operating systems, well, let's call it that, Linux distributions, has never been better. You know, I've been around Linux for 20 over 25 years now. And one thing that has kept me coming back to Linux, you know, I've had a couple of Windows PCs in that time. I've had a few Macs in that time, more Macs than Windows PCs. You know, if you're doing day-to-day things, if you're using more web apps, which a lot of people are, the transition is not as difficult as what people think it is. The problem that still exists is, even when companies move to web-based solutions, and I've got a case study for this. even when people move to web-based solutions, the companies that are doing these projects still only tend to test on Linux and Mac OS. Now, Chrome OS is starting to make inroads and get tested and support for some of these things as well. And you could call that the idiot bastard cousin of Linux. I mean, it's still Linux underneath. It's a Linux kernel, but you know, it's a proprietary stack on top. And I wouldn't put it past Google to get rid of the Linux kernel in the coming years, just so they can control everything. The case study specifically is the software that we use to manage the library. In the industry, it's called a library management system. I know, really creative, huh? But most of the functions of our library management system will, in fact, operate on Linux without a problem. The one piece that I've tested and so far failed on to have it run on Linux is the technology they use for printing receipts. Now, I got the printer to work on Linux. The problem is that the software isn't talking to the printer driver for whatever reason. But I highly doubt that the company has tested it on desktop Linux either. So, you know, it is what it is. I'm not going to invest a lot of time in trying to troubleshoot through that process. But, you know, I am interested to see where it might be in 5 years, right? It is what it is. There's probably a way to make it work. I just haven't dug deep enough to find the solution for it. But it's interesting when the manufacturer of the printer supports Linux, but this stack of software that sits on top and runs in a browser can't support the standard to talk to that printer driver. Like I said, it is what it is. I haven't dug too deep in it. When I was in software development, we called the generic image a golden disk. I've always thought of a golden disk or golden image as the customized version, not the generic version. But it, as with so many things, it could be a regional thing too. I mean, I am not cheap. My wife uses a Microsoft Surface All-in-One and HP Mini PC. Spoiled the wife with Windows PCs. Nothing gets past him, does it? Went well. The only problem was my worrying about it. Along with Windows, I run Mint on a Ryzen 7600X and an RX 7800 XT. Seems to work fine. Yeah. I will say that generally speaking, for gaming on Linux, yes, there are NVIDIA drivers. Some distributions will even have that built into their installer so that you have a fluid experience. But generally speaking, up to this point, and I'll get back to why I'm saying that in a minute, up to this point, AMD graphics cards have been better supported on Linux. Now, it's a twofold reason for saying that. The Steam Deck uses AMD hardware, so it's just logical to conclude that AMD is going to get better support on Linux. The AMD driver has also had I don't know if you call it a stub or what you would call it. I'm not really a developer, so take it for what it is. But there's also been work done in the Linux kernel to help AMD graphics cards run better. That being said, NVIDIA has taken some steps to get the same or similar type of stub or module built into the Linux kernel to propel their graphics cards forward. It's just that they've held to their proprietary driver distribution for a long time. And, AMD having less to lose on the graphics card front than NVIDIA was more open to working with the Linux way of doing things. And, to the point that AMD even helps the developers of the open source drivers for AMD cards rather than, only putting out their reference implementation of the drivers. NVIDIA is getting there. They're not there yet. And AMD has had a head start. So, I'm not a AAA gamer. So that doesn't make a lick of difference to me. I've also never spent over $300 on a graphics card, which puts NVIDIA out of the running unless I buy some ancient card or a used card. That being said, I think what is it, the 7600 XT or 9600 XT that AMD just launched earlier this year, that's supposed to be a $350 MSRP card, which means you'll probably see it hovering around the $299 level. Again, depending on the tariff situation and all that kind of thing. It's an interesting time to be working with computers. Let's just say that, and Linux specifically. All right. We'll go for another 15 minutes or so. We'll hit the hour and 30-minute mark, and then we'll wrap things up. All right. Again, my apologies for not being on time tonight. That was completely my fault, and I'm starting to rethink the Wednesday night stream a little bit. Either doing it later or not doing it. Because I went through, just to put things into perspective, I went through. That's not. Oh, there we go. So as of a couple of days ago, for the year so far, when I recorded the information, I had done 53 shorts this year, 41 long form videos, most of which are midweek news. I will say that. And 97 live streams. Now, this was a couple of days ago, so we're probably at 98 or 99 on live streams as of this one. Shorts and long form has probably each gone up one or two since I recorded the numbers. But the point that I wanted to bring up with saying this is I want to start getting the balance a little more even, at least between long form and live streams. So, and yes, I realize that moving midweek news to a bi-weekly release schedule is not going to help the cause of getting more long form videos out. But after this fog video comes out, hopefully next week for public, hopefully Friday or Saturday for members. After the fog video comes out, I've got a list of like 5 or 6 long forms that I want to do leading up to the end of June. And no, that's not going to completely level things out, but it's going to make a dent to some extent. So, anyway. Anything else I need to... Here we go. Okay, so yeah, I've got a few things lined up. I haven't done, and I kind of miss it at this point because I've taken a break from it, but I haven't done any Linux distribution install videos lately, other than server installs and things in context of fog. So I'm going to do probably Rocky Linux 10 and Elma Linux 10. We might look at the latest development snapshot for what will become Ubuntu 25.10. And then I'm going to start adding to the mix some application reviews and looking into software that runs on Linux. I do have a preference for cross-platform software, but there's a lot of stuff that's come out for the Linux desktop lately. Some of it's Atom apps or Electron apps, which effectively are just wrappers around web apps, right? But some of that's interesting. Some of it, at least from a low hanging fruit perspective for getting people new to Linux up and going and productive more quickly, it's nice to know about that stuff. And since I've been using Fresh RSS to keep up on things, I am seeing more of these things coming through. So, like, not that. I've got, I'm currently just following FlatHub in RSS, but there are things that come across that I don't know what this is. A simple third-party MB client. All right. I don't run MB, so that's not immediately of interest to me, but Blockbench, a Boxy 3D model editor. And if I had guessed from the title of that, I would have figured it was some sort of a benchmarking utility. Main menu. Lists all applications, launchers that are installed on your system. All right. That could be interesting to take a look at, I suppose. This is another image viewer. But anyways, now that I've got some things set up a little differently, where I can have have a Linux machine at my disposal easily. KVMs are great. IP KVM specifically. But I can more easily try out some of this software and do demos of some of this software that seems interesting to me. Now, that being said, I'm far more likely to do this on a current Ubuntu and not this one, which is 2404, I believe. Yeah, this one's still on 2404. But one of the advantages of running Ubuntu, what is that? C dash. One of the advantages of running Ubuntu is that Ubuntu is the best supported for this easy XRDP install, right? And I don't use this that much anymore, but it is nice to know that it's available. And Ubuntu is their primary supported system. Now, they do have best effort support for Elementary OS, for KDE OS. and things like that. The whole premise of this tool, if you're not familiar with it, I have covered it in videos before, is that you can use Microsoft Remote Desktop Protocol with a Linux desktop machine. And the reason that's important is because then you can have one remote desktop utility that can support Linux desktops or Windows desktops, for what it's worth. So, you know, anyway. Any questions, comments, suggestions?
Josephus.
Did I do the topic justice? Are you satisfied with the coverage of the topic? I think I hit all the points. I know I hit all the points in my outline, but hopefully it made some sort of sense. But, bottom line, I've been using Linux for 25 years. Nothing really surprises me anymore. It is what it is. At one point, everybody thought, oh, Red Hat will be, the biggest thing since sliced bread. And on a purely corporate basis, sure, they are probably one of the top used Linux distributions for corporations, for governments. They tick the most boxes for being aligned with different standards that governments put out that software has to comply with, right? That being said, looking at only Red Hat, Fedora, and those that operate in a similar manner to those would be a very US-centric way of looking at the Linux environment overall. And the fact of the matter is, there are developers in probably every country on the planet that contribute in some way to either the Linux kernel or some Linux distribution or some piece of software that runs on top of Linux. And sure, Microsoft has diversified in some ways, having regional headquarters in other places of the world. But we all know that the control is still happening in Redmond, Washington. They're pulling all the strings there. So, it is what it is at this point. Okay, good. Like I said, I continue for 90 minutes there until the beer's gone. The beer is almost gone. The thing about dark beers is that they're not like chugging beers, they're sipping beers. So I've made one beer last 90 minutes. Let's see, anything else? of interest over here. Suppose I could put this up and we could just run through these a little bit. More KDE Plasma official releases. Let's see. Fortnite for iPhone and iPad crashes on iOS 26 beta. It's a beta. What do you expect? Someone got iOS running on a Nintendo Switch. Okay. That's got me curious, but why? Metal 4. Metal 4 announced at WWDC 2025. Apple's introducing 2 practical moves that could help more AAA games run even better on Mac. All right, I will check that one. Okay, Taylor Swift, don't care. That one's going to be interesting. Craig Federici explains why iPad shouldn't run macOS. I'm sure that'll be an interesting read. Uh, 24 gigabyte M4 MacBook Air, $200, all off all-time low, most affordable deal yet. Amazon has now dropped the most affordable M4 MacBook Pro down to $13.99. I'm curious to see what the 15-inch MacBook Air is going for. $13.99. So for the same money, you can get a 15-inch MacBook Air or probably a 14-inch MacBook Pro. Yeah, 14.2-inch MacBook Pro. Honestly, with the M series chips, I'm torn. Yeah, you're probably going to have more thermal throttling on a MacBook Air than a MacBook Pro, but they're still going to both have more thermal throttling than a Mac desktop. It is what it is. macOS Tahoe new Spotlight Clipboard Manager leaves plenty of room for powerful third-party apps. Speaking of clipboard managers, does anybody run a clipboard manager on macOS? I've actually been kind of looking for one to at least test out. Let's check that one, and I'll at least look at these. Oh, great. North Korean hackers deepfake execs in Zoom call to spread Mac malware. Microsoft 365 to block file access via legacy authentication protocols by default. Microsoft has announced that it will soon update security defaults for all M365 tenants to block access to SharePoint, OneDrive, and Microsoft files via legacy authentication protocols. That should be interesting. Um, of course. Cloud storage buckets leaking secret data despite security improvements. Oh, that's got to give you the warm, fuzzy feeling. OpenAI awarded $200 million contract to work with Department of Defense. Because what's another 200 million for DoD work, right? Ooh, Devil May Cry HD collection. Steam gets a new Steam Deck like performance monitor now in beta, replacing the FPS counter. Interesting. I suppose it's time I actually evaluated only Office, especially since they've got a new version out. You know, for those people that actually like this stupid tabbed interface that Microsoft forced on everybody. Yeah. Enhanced with AI powered virtual assistants. Clippy on steroids. And it docks offline with free Microsoft or free apps for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. Also available on iOS and Android devices. I really should give that a try, especially with a big point release. Um, all right. Liliputing. MSI QB NUC AI Plus. That should be interesting. Available for pre-order. Supports up to an Intel Core Ultra 9 288V. Thunderbolt ports. Dual 2.5 gig NICs. Pre-order at B&H. For the low price of $900. Ultra 7 288 or 258V 32 gigs bare bone. So does that mean it's not preloaded with Windows? No FAQs yet. That'll be interesting to see. Zinhua Q25 upgrades the BlackBerry Q20 Classic with the guts to be a modern Android smartphone. Available for pre-order for $400. Or you can order an upgrade kit for $300 instead. That's interesting. Unfortunately, the Blackberries I've got are older than that. Sadly. Anbernick RG slide coming soon for $180. 4.7 inch, 120 hertz sliding display. Interesting, I suppose. And there's a handheld game console on Indiegogo. It has a Qualcomm Snapdragon G3 Gen 3. Wow. Still not going to hold a candle to the Steam Deck or the Legion Go S. But this is an Android-based console. I mean, for sheer sheer battery life, might be all right. If you want to stick to retro stuff, especially. All right. Well, it's been an hour 45 minutes. We're down to 2 people watching. And the beer is now officially gone. So I'm going to call it a night. I've sort of got a second wind now, so I'm probably going to stay up and do some things. Maybe for another hour. But this has been fun. My apologies for being so late again tonight. I'm going to rethink the Wednesday night stream and how I want to do this going forward. Maybe pushing it back an hour to 10 is going to be better. I don't know. I'll experiment a little bit in upcoming streams. So on that note, thank you to everybody that came out. Have a good night, and we'll talk soon.